History likes to pretend that global power shifts happen slowly, through treaties, speeches, and visible confrontations. But behind the curtain, panic spreads much faster than diplomacy, and few things caused more silent fear across the world than a series of American experiments that were never meant to be announced, celebrated, or even acknowledged. These experiments did not roar, they whispered. In the years following World War II, many nations believed the future of power belonged to whoever could rebuild faster, mobilize larger armies, or showcase technological spectacle. The United States saw something else entirely. It understood that the next era would not be decided by size, but by systems, not by reaction, but by anticipation. While other countries rushed to demonstrate strength, America quietly tested ideas that made demonstrations irrelevant. One of the earliest sources of international panic came from American experiments in information dominance. Long before the term became popular, US researchers were already treating information as a weapon more powerful than any missile. Experiments focused on how data could be collected, filtered, and interpreted faster than human decision-making. The goal was simple but terrifying to outsiders: see everything first. Other nations noticed the results before they understood the cause. Diplomacy moves were anticipated. Military exercises were countered before they began. Strategic surprises stopped working. What looked like luck was actually preparation on a scale few could match. This realization triggered unease. As nuclear capabilities spread, panic intensified, but not because of American bombs, because of American control. US experiments focused less on raw destructive power and more on survivability, detection, and response. Systems were tested to ensure that no attack could ever go unnoticed or unanswered. The message this sent was devastating to rivals. Escalation would never grant advantage. Many countries continued building weapons. America experimented with making weapons useless. These experiments extended into the skies. High-altitude reconnaissance projects quietly mapped the world with precision no nation had experienced before. Borders became transparent. Facilities once thought hidden were suddenly visible. This was not surveillance for intimidation, it was surveillance for certainty, and certainty is deeply unsettling to those who rely on secrecy. The panic was subtle but real. Nations accustomed to operating in the shadows began to realize that shadows no longer existed. American experiments had collapsed distance, altitude, and time into manageable variables. The battlefield was no longer where soldiers stood, it was where decisions were made. And America was already there. Perhaps the most destabilizing experiments were those that never resulted in deployed weapons. Research into advanced propulsion, electronic interference, and strategic automation produced outcomes so far ahead of their time that they reshaped planning across the globe. Even when projects were shelved, their implications leaked through intelligence channels. Rivals were forced to assume the worst. Assumption breeds fear. Fear breeds hesitation. As American experiments matured, other nations found themselves trapped in a cycle of response. Every breakthrough triggered rushed counter-projects. Every rumor sparked emergency funding. Entire programs were launched not because they made sense, but because they might prevent falling further behind. This is where panic became policy. The United States, by contrast, remained methodical. Experiments were evaluated not by how impressive they appeared, but by how effectively they altered strategic behavior abroad. If an experiment caused hesitation, confusion, or overreaction, it had already succeeded. No announcement was necessary. One particularly unsettling realization for foreign analysts was how often American experiments emphasized restraint. Systems were designed to function automatically, predictably, and defensively. This removed emotional escalation from conflict scenarios. Other nations relied on centralized authority and rapid political decisions. America experimented with stability under stress. That difference mattered more than any weapon.
As computing experiments accelerated, the gap widened. Modeling, simulation, and predictive analysis allowed American planners to explore thousands of conflict scenarios without firing a single shot. Wars were fought in silence, resolved in probability curves and decision trees. By the time a real-world crisis emerged, its outcome was often already known. Other nations still planned wars. America simulated futures. This asymmetry created profound anxiety. It suggested that no move could surprise, no strategy could overwhelm, and no escalation could restore balance. Power was no longer visible, it was embedded. Even allies were unsettled. American experiments did not stop at military applications. Economic modeling, logistical optimization, and infrastructure resilience were tested at scales that made prolonged conflict unsustainable for anyone else. The implication was clear. Time favored the United States, always. While others needed quick victories, America experimented with endurance. By the late Cold War period, panic had transformed into resignation. Rival nations understood that matching American capability required more than technology. It required cultural change, institutional continuity, and patience measured in decades. Few could manage that. Fewer still were willing to try. The experiments had done their work. The Cold War is remembered as a standoff, but in reality, it was a slow realization spreading through foreign capitals. The race had been decided in laboratories, test ranges, and quiet rooms, long before the public noticed. The fear was not of American aggression, but of American inevitability. And inevitability does not negotiate. The most unsettling truth is that many of these experiments remain classified. Their full scope is unknown. Their influence, however, is undeniable. They reshaped how nations thought, planned, and hesitated. They turned ambition into anxiety and confidence into caution. That is why other nations panicked, not because America was louder, but because America was already ahead and moving on. These were not experiments meant to dominate the world. They were experiments designed to make domination unnecessary, and in doing so, they altered global behavior without ever declaring victory. Silence won again.
As years passed, the panic caused by American experimentation evolved into something more corrosive: dependency. Other nations no longer asked how to surpass the United States. They asked how to predict it. This shift alone marked a strategic defeat. When a rival stops innovating independently and starts waiting for signals, the balance of power has already collapsed. American experiments increasingly focused on uncertainty management. Instead of revealing clear capabilities, they produced ambiguity. Systems were tested that blurred lines between defense and deterrence, between intelligence gathering and influence shaping. Foreign analysts struggled, not because they lacked data, but because the data refused to form a clear conclusion. Uncertainty paralyzed planning. While other governments relied on rigid doctrines, American experiments explored flexibility under chaos. Decision-making models were stress-tested under contradictory inputs. Scenarios were built where no correct answer existed, only optimal responses. This trained American institutions to remain functional when others defaulted to hesitation or overreaction. Panic thrives where confidence erodes. One of the most destabilizing American experiments involved time. Not speed, but duration. Long-term simulations explored how conflicts unfolded not in days or weeks, but over decades. Resource depletion, morale decay, economic strain, variables other nations rarely modeled accurately. The conclusion was unsettling. Prolonged competition favored systems designed for sustainability, not spectacle. The United States adjusted accordingly. Other nations, bound by political cycles and short-term legitimacy, struggled to commit to strategies without immediate payoff. American experiments were patient. They assumed the future could be engineered gradually. This alone widened the psychological gap. Rivals felt rushed. America did not. As technological complexity increased, so did the disparity. American experiments prioritized interoperability. Systems spoke to each other. Data flowed without friction. Upgrades did not require reinvention. Other nations built impressive but isolated technologies, each demanding its own support structure. Integration failures became common. Efficiency collapsed under scale. Observers abroad noticed a pattern. American systems aged well, others did not.
This created another layer of panic. It suggested that even successful foreign projects had expiration dates. American experiments, by contrast, seemed designed to evolve indefinitely. Modularity replaced finality. Flexibility replaced perfection. The realization was uncomfortable. In intelligence circles, a quiet consensus emerged. The United States was not winning by outpacing rivals in every category. It was winning by redefining the categories themselves. Metrics of power used elsewhere simply did not apply anymore. This made comparison impossible and panic inevitable. When nations cannot measure their position, they assume the worst. American experiments in automation further deepened this anxiety. Removing human delay from certain processes changed the tempo of decision-making. While other countries depended on hierarchical approval chains, American systems responded within predefined parameters. Speed became consistency. Consistency became dominance. This was not about removing humans. It was about protecting decisions from emotion. Foreign leadership structures, often centralized and politicized, struggled to adapt. Experiments revealed vulnerabilities that could not be fixed with funding alone. Cultural inertia proved stronger than innovation. Panic turned inward, breeding mistrust and internal paralysis. Meanwhile, American institutions absorbed lessons and refined them. Even failed experiments produced value. Data was retained, knowledge accumulated. Mistakes were not hidden, they were studied. Other nations erased failures to preserve image. America treated failure as intelligence. Over time, this compounded into an overwhelming advantage. This difference alone reshaped the global landscape. As geopolitical tensions flared, American experiments ensured responses remained controlled. Crises that might have escalated elsewhere were diffused through calibrated signaling. The ability to demonstrate readiness without provocation unnerved rivals. It suggested mastery rather than fear. Fear was the currency others operated in. America traded in confidence. By the time some nations recognized the depth of this gap, it was too late to close. Institutional reform takes generations. American experiments had already benefited from decades of continuity. Catching up required not imitation, but transformation. Few attempted it. Panic gradually gave way to acceptance. Strategic ambition narrowed. Goals shifted from dominance to survival, from leadership to relevance. This psychological retreat marked the true end of competition, and it happened quietly. The most unsettling aspect of American experimentation was not its secrecy, but its consistency. There were no sudden leaps, no dramatic announcements, just steady progress. This made it impossible to identify turning points, because there were none. The advantage was cumulative. By the modern era, the effects of these experiments had fully permeated global behavior. Nations self-censored. Strategies were preemptively softened. Risks were avoided. The invisible boundaries set by American capability shaped decisions long before formal diplomacy intervened. This is what real power looks like. The US experiments that made other nations panic did not rely on intimidation. They relied on inevitability. They did not force compliance. They made resistance impractical. Over time, panic faded not because fear disappeared, because opposition no longer seemed rational. And when fear is replaced by resignation, dominance no longer needs to be enforced. It simply exists.